Hi everyone, welcome back to the Rollback Cafe. And today we are going to discuss a common problem that's DevOps is everywhere. But although the statement is true wherever and whatever we are working on, the DevOps term come automatically in our day-to-day path, whether we are trying to deploy something for personal projects or whether we are working in any companies. But what doesn't come up a lot is resilience, clarity, trust, which are still rare. Systems are faster, platforms are becoming much more bigger. But similarly, the failures are louder as well. We have heard on how a couple of bugs have been released into the Instagram, GitHub. Last time we have seen into I think Zendesk. We had Cloudflare and such going on. So in this conversation is just not about tools. It's about how to build system, what the DevOps should look like, and the culture that actually scales. And for that, it's an honor to host Pratik. So Pratik has in past been an engineer and now have moved towards DevOps leadership. He does a great work on a community influence. He has been a speaker to CNCF Durgapur, DevOps Atlanta, and such. So hi Pratik, it's an honor to have you here.
Hey Animesh, yeah, thank you for having me here. So I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Pratik Parikh and I work as a lead DevOps engineer at Symbian. And in my day-to-day work, I work on various things, various aspects of DevOps, right from CI/CD, containerizing applications, deploying on Kubernetes, scaling applications, scaling systems, building internal development platforms, and all of those things. And when I'm not working, I like to speak at community events, go into meetups. Recently, I've been to Cloud Native Durgapur event as well. That I think that would be my most recent. Been to DevOps Malayalam at Kochi. I've been to DevOps Days Atlanta and a lot of other CNCF events as well, mainly around Mumbai, Pune, and so on. But I've been all over India and various try to attend a lot of events and speak at a lot of events. And yeah, that's about it. I'm also, by the way, very recently I've become a Grafana champion,
Oh,
and
that's awesome. Congrats.
yeah, working towards more things coming soon.
Awesome. That's awesome. Since we are on a community front, what brought you to the community actually? And what was your first event? How was your experience?
Okay, so this all started, I guess, last year or around June. Around no, not June. Around February, March. So what happened was, first of all I didn't know that there are such events happening all over the place, right? And how I got into it is on LinkedIn. I saw a post of some Grafana event in Mumbai, and it was a cute little poster, and that got me interested. Okay, let's see what this is. And I was actually using Grafana at that time in my
Ah,
organization, so I thought, let's
okay.
see what this is. And I went there. There I came to know that there are various such events happen. That these events happen all over, and I met a few people, few speakers. More importantly, I met a lot of students, and they presented their work, what projects they were doing, and I mean, related to observability. Slowly, then I came to know, okay, there are many such events. Let's attend other events as well. Then I attended Cloud Native Thane event in Mumbai a few days later.
Right.
And there I came to know that there are so many students who are doing such awesome work, contributing to projects and then showing off their projects. And that got me thinking, okay, there is so much opportunity, there is so much talent, right? And everybody's
Right.
showcasing their work. So, let me also do the same, share knowledge and all of those things. And then I came across this CFP link on Twitter, and I applied, and then I got selected. Then I presented a talk, and it was very well received. There were a lot of questions asked. I think off-topic questions were also asked. So I thought, okay, this is interesting. Let's try to do this more. And slowly, I just like applied to different places, got selected, and spoke there, and just tried
That's
to
how your
carry.
journey started to the community events from a
Yes. So
curiosity.
yes,
Nice.
correct. And then I just got interested into sharing knowledge and giving talks, and it's been, I guess, over 25 talks now in the past 1.5 years. So
That's an awesome number considering in a year. So briefly we touched about off-topic question. How did you like Kolkata? Since you came, I think you came around Durga Puja for in Durgapur,
yes,
right?
I think
How
Kolkata is
was the
really,
experience?
it was really good. I couldn't get to like visit of various places,
Mm-hmm.
but overall I liked it.
So that's nice. So coming to one of the, I think, interesting question, not just for me but for our viewers also. What led you to transition from engineer to the DevOps role?
Okay, so initially I was like a software engineer and not for a very long time, for a few months. And so I'll just talk about how I got started. When I got started, I just knew Python and I knew it really well. And all of these things like DevOps and Kubernetes, I didn't even know these things exist. And in my mind, all I knew was, okay, I know how to write the code. Whatever happens after the code is written, however it is handled in the backend, however it is deployed on the server. I didn't know anything. I just knew, okay, I know how to write code. I can write a Python file, maybe multiple files, create an application. That's all. I don't know how to deploy it. And that's how I started my journey. And then at my first job, I tried out various things. I tried out a little bit of backend, content, and so on. And there was also a little part related to DevOps where I was calling Kubernetes APIs, deploying to AWS Lambda and so on. And it was very overwhelming, to be honest. I was like, however, how will I ever know what this YAML
Yes,
file
yeah.
means? What are all the different keys? How will it ever work? How it works in the backend and so on. But slowly, I just tried to ramp up. And then at one point, I think this is the point I consider where I actually became a DevOps engineer. And that is, I was working on a cluster, the dev cluster, and everybody was deploying there. There was some issue that came up, and the cluster is inaccessible. So none of the developers can deploy their work, right? They all have to do local testing and so on. And at this point, everybody on my team was on leave, so I was the only person there. And then there was this person from the US time zone, and he was like, "It's too late for me. You can try out these things." Then he listed out a few things. After that, I tried them. I was full on panic mode. I couldn't understand anything. And at that time, we did not have LLMs and ChatGPT and so on. So all
Right,
I could do was
right,
just
right, right.
Google, Stack Overflow, just figure out things on my own. And then I came across this thing that, okay, maybe we can do these steps. I told my manager, let's do these things. I was not 100% sure if these things would work, but that's what we did. And then the cluster was restored. And this is the point I consider where I actually became a DevOps engineer. I did not know everything at that point. I just knew a few things, but that's how you start. You learn few things and then
Right, right, right. And then you start, yeah. I think the point that you mentioned till the back end and how um, that somewhere also brings our DevOps India ecosystem right now. I think a lot of people has a misconception that all the engineering is done on the software front till the back end and the front end is ready. But it's not just enough to have the implementation. It's also about moving implementation to infrastructure and then scaling it up. That's where I think the actual future or the real power of DevOps lies in India. What do you think? Like,
yes,
how
I
was your
completely
experience
agree.
has been?
So usually when people write software or talk about software, it's all about, okay, how does my UI look? How everything is
Yeah,
handled in the backend.
yeah,
But what about after the code is written? What about the CI/CD pipeline? What about when you are deploying to the server or to the VM or to Kubernetes? Right. So these things are often overlooked, and many people sometimes don't even care about them. They just assume, okay, things will work. I just have to write the code. And slowly, this misconception is going away. But you need to understand that writing code is one part. But
hmm,
after you write the code, after you deploy, you have to deploy it, you have to scale your application if required, right? And sometimes you have to scale up, scale down, you have to scan for vulnerabilities
right,
because
right. Check
cybersecurity,
the post monitoring
correct?
deployment,
You need to
whether
monitor
everything is
your
working fine.
application,
Yeah,
the logging and so on. And so there is a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. It's not just code. There's a whole package out there.
makes sense. I think with open telemetry being more getting more adopted in across the organization, especially smaller startups, medium-sized companies in India, observability has also become another trendy topic, right? And since you are a Grafana expert as well, what challenges did you face and how did you solve them? If you with Grafana or with any other tool that you have tried out.
Right. So monitoring, right? So when I just started
Right.
out my journey, first company, there was not a lot of monitoring there. There was the logging was really good. and all the metrics that we had, all the monitoring that we had came through the logs. And I had heard this statement that people had tried Prometheus at that time, but it not did not work out well for whatever reason. And I didn't really explore it at that point. So I wanted to explore this. Let's see how it works. So initially, I started with Prometheus and Grafana. By the way, both of these are really awesome tools. If you're not using them, do
Right,
definitely
right,
try them out. So I started with Prometheus and then slowly just scraping metrics, and then step one was getting everything right, even whether I'm not sure if I
right,
need these metrics or not, and then pushing them to Grafana, and then making dashboards, creating alerts. And one most important thing was looking at other dashboards of other people, seeing what actually they are monitoring and how does it make sense, right? So if there is something
right,
like
right, right, right.
somebody is monitoring P99 latency, does this make sense for my application? Does it not make sense? What actually does it mean? So one really important thing I learned from monitoring was, so one way to learn things is, okay, just go deep into the application. The other way is look at the different kind of metrics that you have, then actually understand what these metrics mean. And when you try to understand what these metrics mean, you ultimately understand the system, how the system works. So that was one really good thing that happened to me
Gotcha.
while I was exploring different metrics and different strategies of monitoring. Right. So initially you start with, right, basic server setup, right? Prometheus, Grafana, that's it. Keep
Hmm.
monitoring. Then you understand, okay, this is fine now. I know exactly what metrics I need, what I don't need. How do I scale up my monitoring? Because usually you're monitoring just a system when you start out, but now you have to monitoring
Right.
all your
And then
various systems.
building the resilience trust on that. Yeah.
Correct. So you gradually scale. So when you scale, what are the different issues that come up? Okay, am I pushing metrics too aggressively? Am I monitoring too aggressively? Or is my monitoring system handling? Am I monitoring my monitoring pipeline and so on? So there are various these small things came up, and slowly I learned about these things. And I think Prometheus and Grafana, both of them have been really helpful in my case.
I think one thing that I would like to add on what you said just now is that a lot of times people forget why we are monitoring, or why we are logging, monitoring, or getting the data. It's not about getting metrics in volume. It's about using those metrics to understand our system better. If it's a like what are actually helpful, what things are helping me to understand where my system is lagging, or where it could crash, or where this buffer is coming, why the speed or latency is arising, rather than just figuring out and increasing the latency without maybe uh, thoroughly going and like understanding the root problem. And have you faced this thing, or have you noticed this commonly in our ecosystem?
Yes. So what usually happens is we simply, when we start out with monitoring, we just focus a lot on monitoring. Okay, I need to monitor these
Right,
metrics very aggressively. But what we sometimes tend lose that, okay, you have monitoring, but how does it fit in the bigger picture, right? Don't just
right,
focus too much on metrics or logs or traces, right? Focus on the big picture. Don't just measure latency. Measure, okay, is my system down? Right? Is my is so instead of focusing too much on, okay, my uptime, what
mm-hmm.
is my latency on my slash health endpoint, for example. Instead focus on your focus on the user experience, right? Is the
Right,
maybe
right,
it
that's
could happen
important.
that your website or your app is like, super fast, but when the user actually logs in, they are getting some issue. Maybe they are waiting on your MFA
Oh,
code handling, or
yeah.
maybe redirecting to some other website for SSO and so on. So these things also matter. Sometimes we focus so much on these very specific topics, we
Huh.
tend to lose the bigger picture. So yeah.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think a common problem that from personal experience I have seen, I used to work in a company, and we used to provide the OTPs, and most common problem that was, um, we solved a good problem. We made a passwordless authentication app, as a system, but the password itself, like the OTP, one time OTP, used to come after 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and the user was on hold thinking that something has went wrong, but it's not their fault. It's a congestion at our end. And but from a back end, from a front end, everything is fine. But yeah, yeah, that's one of the experiences that blew me, because as a user, I do not want, if I have to spend more than 5 minutes, 6 minutes to just do a login and get my things working, generally a user tends to drop. Yeah. So, how was your till now experience as a DevOps? And if someone wants to transition to the DevOps, for example, there's one thing that as a college graduate or someone who is pursuing 11, 12, do tend that if it's a software development engineering, that's where only I want to go. DevOps engineer, they keep in a back thought, but eventually they do realize it's important. So for someone who is going to start, what are the things that you would like to focus them on for the priority as a common topic for both the software and the DevOps?
Okay, so for somebody who is just starting out, I would say don't focus too much on, very specific topics in DevOps. Just first become a good, you know, become a good software engineer. Try to maybe master one or two languages, right? Just try to create some basic apps. Maybe a web app is fine, right? And once you create these applications, so this is one common strategy I tell various students. So just try to create some application. Let's say it's a Node.js or a Python application or any kind of application. Web app would be a really good example. So
Right.
once you
Yeah.
create this application, try to convert it into a container. Maybe use Docker, write a Docker file, try to run it as a Docker container. That is step one. Once you do that, you are now you know how containers work. So next step would be, okay, now deploy it on Kubernetes. Don't focus too much on, okay, how this exactly works behind the scenes. Just try to get deployment and the
Things ship.
service,
Yeah.
ingress, and so on, all of those resources, right? Once you deploy it on Kubernetes, then comes your other steps. Maybe add some monitoring, right? So do things step by step. Once you add some monitoring as well, maybe it's time to move, instead of running Kubernetes locally, maybe run it on the cloud, right? Maybe run it on a
Right.
server,
Right. Right. Right.
or
Right.
maybe
Right.
use managed Kubernetes. So there are various different things. So once you use the cloud, maybe you'll have to attach a load balancer, right, to access it from the outside. So now you know how a load balancer works behind the scenes, how the traffic is being sent. Maybe you use ingress controller or gateway API. There are various methods to expose the application to the internet. So maybe try one route. Okay, try the other one. See what are the differences, how things work behind the scenes. And this is how you are slowly building up, right? Now you went just from creating applications to now creating infrastructure.
Understood.
Right.
Yeah.
Next, you can explore various different IIC tools. Right.
I think this will also help them to not just on a personal knowledge base, but what you said will help them in understanding the culture of, I think, in the engineering in general. As I think we earlier talked about building stuff, implementing stuff, and then understanding how those things will scale, understanding how the infrastructures play a as much as important role, what pillars they should focus on, and if a Docker file is somehow becomes too big, then how can it impact your applications, how to reduce the image size, and those things in general. But one question that I'm always wanted to ask is, what is the difference between DevOps and a platform engineering? Today seems a nice day to ask you. What is actually a difference between the DevOps and the platform engineering, and why have we created this differentiation?
Yeah, actually, this DevOps definition, right? It's kind of loose, and I think a lot of times varies from organization to organization. A lot of different companies treat DevOps like a thought, right? Or a strategy. Okay, you have
Right.
developers, you have solutions people, and then you're trying to bridge the gap between the two, right? DevOps, the original DevOps philosophy. But in a lot of
Yeah.
small,
The
mid-sized
definition.
startup
Yeah.
companies, this definition changes. A lot of the times, these DevOps engineers are actually operational people, and they try to automate things, right? So sometimes, you're following the DevOps philosophy, but other times maybe you are like an ops engineer with a little bit of knowledge about how the development practices work. So it
No,
changes a lot of times. Platform engineering, I would say, is a very up and coming thing. It's already there. And
right.
platform
Yes.
engineering, basically, I would say, in the very basic sense, you have developers deploying their code. How can you make their life easy and deploying their code, right? Whether it's in your development environment, staging environment, production, and so on, right? So all they want to, so
Right.
I
Right.
think
Yeah.
of it like this, right? You have a platform. The developer needs to specify only maybe the branch of their code, and that's it. That's the only thing they should be specifying. And based on those inputs, based on this so single input, you should be able to deploy your application, right? If there are multiple applications, maybe you can take a list of, okay, what are the different types of applications I need to deploy, just deploy them, right? This, I would say, is
Makes
like the
sense.
very basic thing of
More like a
platform.
GitOps styling, more like a GitOps plus DevOps is equal to platform engineering, some sort. Like obviously, GitOps plus much more becomes a upper level of a platform engineering tools.
Correct. So you can have very complex platforms. You can have very basic ones as well, right? Maybe in the most basic sense, it would be like a script that you run. It's fine. Doesn't
Right.
matter.
Right.
Maybe you can have like an API. Maybe you can have a CLI. You can have a Slack command as well, right? Or maybe a full-fledged web application with a lot of documents and so on. It doesn't matter. You can start
Right.
from
Right. Right.
anywhere.
Right.
It's just that how well is it? How much problems does it reduce for the developers? Because the developers here are your users. Maybe they are slightly better
Right.
than your standard users because they know how code works. But ultimately, you need to
They're
treat them.
able to debug the errors. They'll be able to understand why this rose or what. Yeah.
For them, they just need to provide their code and it should be deployed.
Mhm.
That's it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. I think we have a quite a number of tools here. GitLab, CI/CD, and I think we have a drone. Most popular being, I think, yeah, most popular. I think it would be GitHub Actions that as an individual users we may be using, or Harness, Drone CI, or GitLab. I'm not so sure, but I have heard people using it for their um, AI in CI/CD thing. Uh, Personally, I haven't tried it out. But what do you think? Like people have with the Gen AI especially coming in, a lot of agents are being built on top of to make CI/CD either secure or smoother or effective for the developers to deploy and just do the checks, run the parameters, add the policies, and those stuff on their own.
Yeah, I think with Gen AI, with LLM, different various AI agents, things have been much easier. And one I would like to highlight one problem. So
Yeah.
when you use your standard CI/CD, right? It's not like if without AI you cannot do anything. You can do everything,
Right. 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 Right.
right? But the one problem maybe AI solves the best is that let's say you have your maybe your Git repo where you are continuously pushing changes, right? And when you push changes, you are basically writing code,
Right.
obviously. But how do these code changes translate to maybe something like when you have your entire product, these changes make product changes, right? So
Right. Right.
ultimately, what the user cares about, maybe from one version to another, what are the changes that I am feeling, what are the release
The
notes,
yeah, customer facing, no,
right?
customer facing
So one
changes.
thing
Yeah.
I believe AI translates really well is you are making code changes, but ultimately these become the release notes. And when
Right.
you
Right.
or
What
somebody
features
writes
coming? Yeah.
release notes, they have to manually go through the changes, maybe go through the ticket descriptions and PR descriptions and so on, and then manually do all of it, right? But what AI does
Right.
best is translate these things. So it becomes very easy for somebody to just run the AI tool, and then everything is there, and then just manually verify. So a lot of these
Mm.
things, a lot of AI agents, and reduce the manual effort a lot. And I think this is where AI shines the most, at least in the CI/CD.
I believe yes, on that, and plus with the governance, like data governance, data leaks, security front also, I think they are helping a bit more. That they have a potential use case. I have yet to see a full fledged um, what should I say, perfect 100% AGI achieved, but but definitely helping building policies so that if there is some miscellaneous script that could have entered by chance or some leak code, they can capture those things early a lot compared to the just telling okay this QA sanity failed or prod one sanity failed or how many productions you have. Um, Plus, I think somewhere around down the line, not this year, but definitely next couple of years, I believe CI/CD security in CI/CD. That's where actually the Gen AI agents will truly lie because the pipeline verification final review is definitely on the DevOps engineer because it's their what should I say responsibility till they sign it off what things have went. But the security is one place where as many as checks we can keep for to prevent anything. That's the best part, I think.
Correct. Yeah, I totally agree. And even I routinely use AI. So how I use it is, for example, you have this application, right?
Right,
Maybe a new vulnerability has been introduced, right? So
right,
now,
right,
for me at least, I would say, okay, yeah, just go, fix this, please, because we are going to deploy it in production, or maybe we are deploying it in the customer environment, and so on. And at this point, you really need to be, fully free of vulnerabilities. But
right,
sometimes it
right,
may happen, right? Maybe the developer cannot fix it. Maybe there is no time. But one thing what AI helps me a lot is, okay, identifying exactly, okay, this is the vulnerability, but is it really going to affect me? Is it going to affect me in my environment? Maybe this vulnerability is something, maybe I can check the attack vectors and so on, but it becomes very tough to do every manually for each and every
right,
vulnerability. But
right.
now, if I know, if AI can tell me, okay, this vulnerability is only affected to those applications which are exposed to the internet. But if my application is not, I am probably safe, right? So AI actually helps me understand, okay, what is the actual impact? Is it even, is
But
it
like,
even
yeah,
vulnerable for me in my environment? Or maybe it's
or it's just another
only
use case
certain
that I need to
cases.
fetch. Yeah.
Yes, correct. So at least in that way, I know exactly when to, actually force people to fix these, or when to relax a little bit.
So I think yeah, it gives a breather. I think a lot of times, um, what we consider as a vulnerability is just that we don't have to. Our like dependencies are freezed. We can't update all of our packages suddenly, or there's one package which used to provide that specific feature. We need to stick on those, not upgrade it. And sometimes, if we run a pipeline, it throws an error, and that okay, you need to upgrade it. It has this vulnerability, but these are what is running my system. So these are the necessary evil, I would say, which we have to keep somehow. One thing that comes to my mind with our conversation is that there are two main points that we discussed. Um, First thing, the resilience or the system are the things that actually build your culture and scale your project or infrastructure. It's not about code, just about code, or not all tools will help solve your problem. Um, what do you think? Like, if you have to rate it out of 10, how much would you agree on this one?
Could you repeat?
Yeah, what I said was like resilience doesn't just like about code. It's about more on a culture, and system helps you scale your organization if you understand it better, and not just use tools for the same thing, the metric volume. Do not just care about the data inflow and such.
Right. So I believe code is just one part of the story, right? You deploy your code, but
Right,
how does your infra handle it? How does your infra scale it, right? Is your code made that it can scale to multiple servers or multiple user requests and so on? And many times, scaling is not just like a code problem, it's a system problem and a human problem, right?
right,
So it's a people problem. So if you have those kind of people, if you have that kind of culture, right,
right,
where people not just think about the code, but think about the whole system, about the entire application,
right.
entire system as a whole, right? That's where it helps you scale quickly and much in a much better manner as compared to just scaling code or scaling specific like focusing on specific metrics or specific parts of code, but think overall.
I think I agree. I think it has become more like a operating system. We have a operating system. Without that, we can't run our any of the system, whether it's a Linux, Mac, or Windows. Similarly, I think the DevOps is not just about one person or a team. It has become more like an operating model for organizations, companies, startup. And if that isn't fostered well, like as a culture or as a strategy or as a thinking, even if it's not aligned with as a whole set, if you think about it in a pieces, and pieces, then the one piece is supposed to fall somewhere around. I think, yeah, cool. It was great talking to you, Pratik, and I think we today, me and everyone, got to learn why DevOps is just um, not just about engineering and CI/CD anymore. It has become a much more on how the practice in terms um, it terms is, and with Gen AI, what are the potential use cases that we may see soon in future. So thank you for your time, and I hope everyone in the audience had a great time. Till then, see you soon.
Yep. Thank you so much.